There is a question that everyone asks, and if you haven't asked it yet, you definitely will. Have you ever prayed with all your heart and wondered if God is actually listening to you? Sometimes it may seem like our words get lost in silence without any response, but are we praying the right way? Are there signs that God sends to show He is listening? In this content, we will explore how to identify the voice of God amidst our prayers, understand what might block our spiritual connection, and discover simple actions that can make our prayers deeper and more effective. Get ready to receive transformative insights and find clarity in your prayer life. The importance of prayer in the Christian life. Prayer is not a cold ritual or a ceremony to impress onlookers. It is not limited to simple memorized phrases or hurried, soulless repetitions. It springs from an inner thirst, a longing that sometimes suffocates and cries out for answers. When we stand before God in prayer, something mysterious happens. There is a meeting that transcends the obvious, which calls for unconditional surrender and asks for an open heart to both receive and give. There is no reason to pretend or hide when the essence of prayer is revealed. The voice that cries out within us needs to be heard. The pain we carry needs to be exposed. The love we do not yet understand, but that pursues us, cannot be ignored. In this journey, many wonder if their pleas truly reach the heavens, or if they simply wander into the void. A sense of unease arises. Does God hear all my words? Does He notice the tears that fall in silence? These doubts should not be stifled. They are a natural part of a relationship that is still under construction, or for some, a relationship that has been abandoned and needs to be rekindled. Those who have felt frustrated, alone, or even outraged by the lack of immediate answers know that prayer can seem like an unsolvable enigma. However, there is a hope that emerges when we see prayer as something far beyond requests and demands. It carries a depth that can transform the innermost being of anyone who genuinely wishes to draw closer to God. The pursuit of divine intimacy should not be treated as a bureaucratic task or a forced act merely to fulfill an obligation. Prayer transcends any formality because it involves our entire being. It encompasses our weaknesses, our deepest dreams, our gratitude, and even the wounds we conceal. In this context, many have experienced indescribable sensations during moments of surrender, while others still seek to rekindle that flame that extinguished after so many disappointments. It is in this instability that the urgency to understand that praying is much more than reciting phrases is revealed. It is accessing a presence that comforts, exhorts, uplifts, and calms. Still, do not expect a magic formula to instantly solve all your problems. Prayer touches dimensions that require patience, courage, and a willingness to grow. If you've ever felt a tug in your chest, something calling you to go beyond mere words, don't ignore it. There is an invitation to connect that isn't based on human imposition, but on the truth of a God who cares about every detail. And when this begins to feel real, there's no way to remain indifferent. It's at this point that the journey of prayer starts to bring meaning to every step we take. As you continue reading, feel free to reflect, and at the end, express your faith in the comments if you'd like to share something that warms your heart and others. Your prayer experience could resonate in the life of someone who is tired and lost. So don't hold back what burns within you. The true meaning of prayer. Relationship with God. In the hectic routine of life, many see prayer as a tool to ask for help or to vent about challenges that seem insurmountable. This limited view can push people away from a deeper reality. Prayer is not a request counter nor a way to negotiate favors. It's an opportunity to engage in dialogue, but also to contemplate. When we dive into the presence of God with sincerity, a safe space emerges to reveal what's in our soul, without disguises, without masks. It's there that we find the freedom to admit our mistakes, weaknesses, and thoughts that many times we fear to confess even to ourselves. Some people ask, if God already knows everything, why pray? This question carries a truth. God knows every little part of us. However, prayer is a meeting, and true meetings require exchange. It is the opening of the heart that creates communion, showing dependence and recognition of divine sovereignty. Every word or sigh is an affirmation that we don't want to move forward alone. In this process, we begin to realize there is a gentle voice guiding us, not in an imposing way, but like someone who wishes to share secrets and directions that often go unnoticed when we are too busy with our own rush. In this relationship, silence also speaks. When we stop talking, we can listen. This listening is essential so that we don't turn our prayer into a tiring monologue. The relationship deepens as we understand that there is more to the conversation with the Creator than just requests. There is praise, there is gratitude, there is confession, there are tears, and yes, there is a celebration of the life He grants us. There are times when the answers don't come in the way we expect, but there is a peace that mysteriously fills the void that used to bother us so much. It may not be something easy to explain in words, but those who experience it know that something has changed within. When we think of a relationship with God, we may feel some discomfort if we are used to religious formalities without emotion. However, the concept is both simple and profound: to draw closer to Him without fear, seeking not just His hands, but His heart. In this approach, the soul finds a place to rest. If this understanding feels a bit strange, it may be time to rethink how you have approached prayer. Allow your inner self to be sincere. Let your spirit yearn for something that transcends rigidity and reaches the essence that connects, unites, and restores. It is at this level of engagement that we begin to see prayer as a permanent invitation rather than a one-time obligation. James 5:16, and the power of effective prayer. The scripture reminds us, the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. This passage from James 5:16 sparks curiosity and also a sense of responsibility. Being righteous in this context does not mean displaying a perfection that no one can achieve. It is not about being free from flaws or failures. The righteousness James refers to points to a life that seeks to align with divine principles, desiring to live in integrity, not for human applause, but to walk in harmony with God's heart. And when there is this genuine pursuit, prayer becomes a catalyst for true transformation. Power and effectiveness are not limited to visible results for everyone to see. Sometimes the most significant change happens within ourselves, in how we begin to view our struggles, our relationships, and even how we see ourselves. Praying in faith, according to what the biblical text highlights, can break down barriers that once seemed insurmountable, and this transformation does not only occur in extreme situations. Every detail, every area of life can be touched when we allow ourselves to be guided by a deep conviction that God is at work, even when we do not understand the paths. For many, the idea of having a powerful prayer feels distant, almost impossible. But it's not about reaching a high level of spirituality that only a few attain. It's about the humility to recognize that we don't control everything. It's about a heart willing to submit to divine will. When James speaks of the effectiveness of prayer, he is not promising immediate resolution to all problems. There are moments when the struggle stretches on and the answers seem delayed. However, faith strengthens in perseverance. And on this journey, we learn that there is an inner strength that manifests when we persist in prayer, trusting in the goodness of a God who, despite our limited understanding, remains in control. You may be tired, lacking the motivation to persist with the same pleas that repeat day after day. Perhaps you've asked yourself, why keep insisting if nothing changes? But don't overlook the promise contained in this verse. Something profound happens when we stand firm in prayer, regardless of the circumstances. Perhaps the biggest change is in how you face adversity. Maybe doors will open that you never even imagined existed. The key is to stay connected, because the prayer of the righteous, of those who cling to faith, is not destined for ineffectiveness. There's something happening behind the scenes that escapes our immediate perception. Overcoming barriers and silences. Some people feel frustrated because they try to pray but encounter an emptiness that seems insurmountable. They may question whether God has abandoned them or if they have made some irreparable mistake. This feeling is not exclusive to a few. Many men and women have faced sleepless nights crying without being able to hear even a whisper that makes them feel the divine presence. During this time of apparent silence, the heart becomes restless and even thinks about giving up. However, there is something that needs to be remembered. God's silence is not necessarily absence. Sometimes it is just a call to deepen the search, to develop a faith that doesn't rely on visible signs at all times. There are also other barriers that seem to build walls around the heart. People who carry wounds, guilt, anger, or even unresolved issues within themselves often feel a block when trying to communicate with God. Don't be deceived into thinking that praying means ignoring these internal conflicts. On the contrary, genuine prayer brings everything into the light. This exposure can be uncomfortable, it can hurt pride, but it is precisely in this discomfort that deep healing and liberation occur. Therefore, don't accept the idea that everything is okay, when in reality there is a whirlwind of stifled feelings. Approach God with what you truly carry inside. Another barrier is the relentless rush. People who only kneel to say a few rushed words and then get up, as if God is obligated to act within a tight schedule. This attitude reveals a lack of interest in nurturing communion. Prayer often requires patience. It requires a rhythm different from the frenzy that dominates the world around us. Don't try to speed up processes that need time to mature. If the answer doesn't come in the next second, it doesn't mean that God is absent. It may just be part of a plan that transcends our immediacy. Perhaps you identify with these barriers or have already faced others that weren't mentioned. It's essential to understand that God is not intentionally distancing himself from you. There is a constant invitation to persevere, to seek intimacy amid emotional storms. When we open ourselves to this path, we gradually realize that the barriers begin to crumble, that the divine voice may manifest in subtle and unexpected ways. And then, prayer stops being a burden and transforms into a beacon that illuminates even the darkest alleyways of our inner selves, the dimension of listening. Learning to hear God. Many pray as if they are before an audience, waiting for endless speeches. They pour out words, wishes, complaints, and in the end, they rise without leaving space for the silence that allows for listening. It is at this point that the profound dimension of the relationship with God is lost. Praying is not just about speaking. It also requires waiting, feeling, and discerning. There are moments when he speaks to the heart so gently that any inner turmoil can drown out what is being whispered. If we do not cultivate an internal environment of calm, we may go our entire lives crying out without noticing the answers that come. Some expect to hear audible voices or see extraordinary signs. This can happen, but it is not the norm. There are situations in which God brings a verse to mind, offers comfort during a reading, or inspires an action that we had no idea was necessary. There may be a sudden urge to forgive someone or to ask for forgiveness. There may be a sense of peace that defies all logic but quiets old fears. Listening to God involves being willing to embrace what he wants to communicate, even if it doesn't always make immediate sense. It requires shedding prejudices and understanding that the Creator is not limited to our human forms of communication. In this dimension of listening, it's common to feel uneasy, especially if we're used to controlling everything. Silence can be uncomfortable because it brings us face to face with our inner noise. Yet it's in this confrontation that the divine voice can emerge. If you're tired of empty monologues, consider allowing some quiet time after your words. Wait. If you feel the urge to open the Bible to a specific passage, do it. If you feel that you need to just sit in silence, don't fight it. Listening is just as important as speaking, as prayer is not a one-way street. It's a dialogue that, when well established, nourishes the soul in astonishing ways. Personal and collective transformations. True prayer leaves deep marks, both on the one who prays and on those around them. When someone develops the habit of relating to God sincerely, signs of change can become evident. There is more gentleness, more patience, more courage to face situations that once felt unsustainable. Anxiety may not completely disappear, but it's confronted with a new perspective. Issues that once caused despair are now viewed through a lens of hope. And this doesn't happen solely through human effort, but through the silent action of a God who transforms hearts. On a collective level, prayer binds people together in ways that transcend mere personal affinities. Communities that pray together discover ties of solidarity and mutual support that go far beyond empty gatherings. There is sharing of pain. There is celebration of victories. There is a sense of family that grows stronger. When a church comes together to pray, something different happens. It may be subtle, almost imperceptible to outsiders, but there is a presence there that consoles, awakens, and restores. And this presence drives people to act, to reach out to those in need, to practice compassion. You might be wondering, but why are there still so many flaws and conflicts even where people pray? The answer isn't simple, but there's a perspective that each person is in a process of growth. Prayer does not nullify individual freedom. It doesn't instantly remove deep-rooted selfishness or pride. However, as we persevere in seeking God, each individual becomes molded. There's a greater willingness to forgive, to engage in dialogue, to love. Personal transformation affects the collective, and the collective, in turn, strengthens the individual. It's a cycle that tends to progress as everyone comes together for a greater purpose than personal interests. If you're reading this and feel the urge to experience this transformation, don't get caught up in excessive formalities. Bring the true face of your being before God and allow Him to work on the wounds and deep-seated fears. Over time, you'll notice that something inexplicable starts to bubble up in your soul, leading you to see everyday situations from a different perspective. And this transformation will continue to expand, creating ripples that touch family, friends, co-workers, and even people you wouldn't imagine would be influenced. Feelings, emotions, and deep connection. Prayer is not a purely rational act. It involves emotions, it involves tears, it involves smiles, and it even involves those moments when we can't say anything but are overwhelmed by a comforting presence. Don't try to suppress what you're feeling. Opening your heart to God means acknowledging the full range of feelings that pulse within you, from the euphoria of achieving a dream to the crushing pain of an irreparable loss. All of this is part of who we are. When we approach God without pretense, there's an intensity that moves us. Some people fear showing vulnerability in prayer, thinking they need to maintain a rigid posture. No crying, no breaking down. But by hiding this vulnerability, you might be missing a unique encounter with divine compassion. God's response often comes when we are exhausted from resisting, when we finally surrender and let Him take care of what we carry. This openness frees the soul from burdens accumulated over days, months, and even years. And don't be mistaken, God cares about every tear, every sigh, every feeling that passes through us. This deep connection does not rely on perfect settings or absolute tranquility. It can happen in a simple room, on a park bench, or inside a crowded bus. God is not confined to the walls of temples or solemn environments. He enters spaces and visits those who call on him, regardless of status or external conditions. What he seeks is truth and sincerity. So don't hesitate to bring your whole self, wounds and hopes, so that the divine voice finds echo within you. Encouraging faith, comments and engagement. Now, it's essential for you who have made it this far to not just stay in theory. We want to invite you to express your faith and declare what you expect from God. Use the comments to affirm, "I believe in divine faithfulness. I receive the peace that comes from the Lord. I pray for God's will to prevail in my life." When you write these declarations, something strengthens within you and also encourages those who read them. Don't underestimate the power of a sincere comment, as this simple act can be the trigger someone else needs to renew their strength. Be bold in sharing your testimony or your hope for victory. We're not talking about an arrogant faith, but rather a conviction that arises when we understand that God is present. Fellowship grows as we share experiences, significant moments, reflections, or even questions that still linger unanswered. In this space of exchange, we can see a virtual community sprouting that supports each other, even from a distance, united by the same hope. So, don't hold back. Say something in the comments. Declare your hope. Pray for those you don't even know. It's in this act of interaction that we create a bond that transcends screens and reaches the heart. And in doing so, you not only bless yourself, but also encourage others to see that prayer is alive, relevant, and transformative. If you feel led to encourage someone, write a word of encouragement. If you're facing an internal storm, ask for prayer without fear. There are people who will unite with you in prayer, even if they haven't seen you in person. In this act, faith multiplies. Why do some prayers seem unanswered? Introduction. Sometimes there's a deep sense of loneliness when you notice that the pleas lifted to heaven do not produce an immediate echo. You may find yourself facing a silence that bothers you, raises questions, and can even undermine hope. It's common to think that God isn't listening, or perhaps is deliberately ignoring the cry you present. But don't be deceived. The fact that you don't see an immediate unfolding doesn't mean he isn't acting. There's a reason behind every apparent delay, and this is what we're going to dive into now. When we talk about prayers that have not been answered, we are actually referring to expectations that have not been met in the speed or manner we desire. God always responds, but the answer is not always what we envisioned. This point, as disconcerting as it may be, deserves reflection. Don't expect spiritual life to be controlled by our whims. In the divine realm, there is a movement that transcends logical calculations. Therefore, thinking that he is inactive reveals only a limited view of reality. By persisting in your search, you discover that silence can be full of meaning. Not everything is resolved in the snap of a finger. It is necessary to face the truth. Not everything is clarified in the blink of an eye. Some battles require consistency. Some dreams demand a process of maturation. What many people call lack of response may actually be a period of preparation during which God shapes character, confronts pride, and fosters sensitivity so that later on what is hoped for can be received responsibly and with genuine gratitude. In the meantime, if disappointment invades your mind, remember that God is working. Human impatience does not compel the Creator to hasten his plan. In some cases, there are those who ask for something without being ready to accept the consequences. God does not act impulsively, nor does he bless randomly. He sees far ahead, much beyond what we are capable of observing right now. If there is a sincere desire in your heart, He does not disregard it. But if the answer does not come in the exact form you outlined, do not conclude that He has abandoned you. There is a wisdom that surpasses our understanding, although it is difficult to accept this when pain tightens and when waiting seems endless. 3 types of divine response. Those who delve into the journey of faith realize that God responds in various ways. Some sum this up in 3 possibilities: yes, wait, and I have something better for you. None of these options arise by chance. Each one reveals a facet of divine care, which takes into account situations that may not be clear to us. There are moments when the miracle happens, the door opens, the problem disappears, or victory arrives unmistakably. In these instances, the soul fills with gratitude as everything unfolds as expected. However, don't just limit yourself to celebrating. Use this experience to strengthen your faith and to inspire others who are also crying out for help. Sharing the joy of an answered prayer helps keep alive the hope of those still caught in the storm. This is often the type of response that confuses us the most and demands the most patience. When God says, "Wait," it doesn't mean He is indifferent to your longing. It may be a call to trust, even when there are no physical signs that anything is moving. This is where trust is put to the test, and many begin to doubt whether it is truly worth persevering. But this wait may be linked to deep lessons that the soul can only absorb over time. Do not dismiss the learning that comes from this process. Frustration often sets in when what we envision as the perfect solution doesn't materialize. However, the human mind doesn't always consider all the variables. What seemed good may hide traps we cannot see. God, knowing the whole picture, sometimes denies what we insist on asking for, but in return offers something far beyond what we were hoping for. Of course, at the moment of denial, the pain can be intense, but in the long run, there is relief in realizing that the divine plan is safer and more complete than the human projection. When God's timing contradicts our own, how many times have we begged for urgent solutions, believing it's impractical to wait another second? And yet, nothing changes. This apparent stagnation can push us to the brink of despair. However, divine timing does not adhere to the clocks that enslave us. We are constrained by schedules, deadlines, and social pressures. God does not operate bound by exact dates. Rather, He works within a broader purpose. If He moves in a way different from what you expected, it doesn't imply disinterest. It's a reminder that He does not bend to our impatience. The stories of many who persevered until the last moment show that the waiting was unexpectedly rewarded. Something blossoms along this journey, something that words cannot clearly define. There is inner growth, there is a renewal of faith, and there is a clearer vision of what truly matters. Immaturity does not prevail when we are forced to deal with delays, as we learn to discern the value of perseverance, the weight of expectations, and the question of human will. There are cases where prayers are offered as if they were commands. Many people approach God with the posture of one demanding the fulfillment of promises that were never made. They project their plans and force a conception of faith based on emotional manipulation. In these moments, when the answer does not align with this fervent desire, the feeling is one of rejection or lack of response. God does not yield to manipulations. He acts with love, but also with firmness, and this can unsettle those who refuse to be confronted in their own will. If you feel that your prayers are piling up without response, it's good to review your motivations. Is there a genuine interest in aligning with divine purpose, or is it merely a quest for conveniences? It's not always pleasant to confront that our perspective may have been mistaken. But this internal confrontation is a crucial step in maturing in faith. God is not pleased with facades or bargains. He sees the heart laid bare without disguises. This true encounter can be uncomfortable, but it opens doors to a solid relationship, diving into the mystery of divine response. Responding with an immediate yes or a prolonged wait is not a mechanical process. There is a mystery involved in how God guides us. It is within this mystery that faith finds space to grow. If everything were translated into clear and indisputable signs, there would be no room for trust. Therefore, in the face of circumstances beyond our control, genuine faith continues to pulse, even when the mind struggles to explain why there are so many delays or changes in direction. If there is a lesson to be learned from this process, it is to let go of control. Recognizing that we do not own tomorrow, nor have unrestricted access to what is happening in the spiritual realm. This realization breaks us, but it also positions us ideally to receive what God has in store. When we stop insisting on paths that are not ours to take, we open the way to see His wisdom in what once seemed like just contradiction. An invitation to reflection and expression of faith. At this moment, it is crucial for you to look within and ask yourself, what do I really expect from God? Am I willing to receive an answer different from what I planned? In facing this questioning, you may discover that there is fear, pride, or insecurity. But at the same time, there may be a spark of hope that propels you to take another step. Take this space to declare your trust, even when everything seems unfavorable. In the comments, express your faith. Write something like, I trust in divine purpose. I believe even without seeing. Or I'm ready to say yes to what God has for me. By doing this, you strengthen your heart and encourage others to keep hope alive. Someone might need to read exactly what you share. A real encounter with God in the midst of the unknown. Faith is not built solely in ease. It solidifies in pain and uncertainty. When everything is going well, we rarely question divine action. But when it seems that the answer isn't coming, we are compelled to probe our innermost selves, to reassess our priorities, to confront fears that have yet to be exposed. And in that sincere, often painful encounter, there is a new understanding of God's love. A love that corrects, that supports, that reaffirms our worth, even when we have lost hope. It's not about romanticizing waiting or pretending that struggles don't exist. It's accepting that spiritual life develops in a dimension that doesn't follow human rules. What today feels like a no could be part of an extraordinary plan that will only make sense later on. God remains God, even when we insist on misunderstanding His ways. Why do some prayers seem unanswered? Perhaps because God has already answered in a way that our limited vision did not capture. Maybe He wants us to wait a little longer so that in due time everything will make sense. Or perhaps it's because He has something far beyond what we dare to ask for. The truth is that He does not remain silent without reason. He does not abandon those who call on Him with a sincere heart. Every answer, whatever it may be, reveals a part of the divine character that cares, that guides, and that intervenes at the right time. Let go of wanting everything explained in detail. Trusting means throwing yourself into the arms of God, even when external circumstances scream otherwise. And when you make this decision, you may be surprised by outcomes that defy logic. Now, after absorbing each point raised here, leave your statement of faith in the comments. May this be the moment to show the world and yourself that you persist, not because there are no challenges, but because you are certain that God remains. Write something that strengthens your own spirit and reaches the heart of those who read it. Declarations of trust can change destinies as they connect hearts around a truth greater than any adversity. Don't let this impulse fade away. Conclude your reading by putting into practice what has emerged from within you. Inner peace. There are moments when the weight of circumstances feels almost suffocating. Problems pile up, paths close off, and the soul feels ready to crumble. And yet, it is possible to discover a serenity that no one can take away. It is not an artificial tranquility, but something deep that springs forth when one stands firm in God. This kind of peace does not depend on resolved external situations. It is born within the heart, especially when everything around appears difficult. When people look on, they do not understand how someone facing intense pressures can maintain balance and hope. It is this peace, which comes from above, that we will speak about now. It's pointless to pretend that understanding divine peace is simple. The human mind craves logical explanations, immediate proof that there's a way out. But when God decides to pour out a peace that transcends all understanding, He does not ask for permission to fit into our reasoning. He simply acts. The great challenge is to allow that care to permeate every area of being. When insecurity arises, when fear insists on dominating, it is at that moment that divine peace reveals itself even more powerfully. Often, we are exhausted from fighting with our own strength, and all we long for is a breath, a certainty that we are not alone. And it is then that God intervenes, bringing a calm that cannot be explained by mere words. The strength of the peace. God gives the inner peace granted by God is not limited to moments of leisure or the complete absence of conflict. It surpasses any notion that life needs to be perfect for the soul to be serene. When God invades the heart, He brings a sense of security that defies logic. No matter what happens, you feel that there is a hand sustaining everything. Outwardly, things may seem complicated. The horizons may not yet show visible solutions, but there is a conviction that God continues to work. And that certainty changes everything. It's impressive to observe how, in times of turmoil, some people exhibit an unshakable calm and strength. They do not deny the struggle, they do not pretend that problems have vanished, but they are convinced that nothing shakes them completely. This strength does not come from self-help techniques. It comes from a deep relationship with the Creator, who not only sees our difficulties, but also offers a peace distinct from what the world knows. A peace that is not just comforting phrases, but a presence that embraces the soul and restores hope. Philippians 4:7, and the power that flows from this verse. The text of Philippians 4:7 points to a transformative reality, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This passage reveals that we are not speaking of a fragile or temporary peace. It surpasses human understanding and goes beyond immediate comprehension. It's as if there is a shield covering both the heart and the mind, protecting us from destructive thoughts and feelings that could drown us in despair. It is not vague advice. It is a promise that when we turn to God, He intervenes and establishes an internal fortress. This peace cannot be explained, but it can be felt. It calms the storms in the soul, even if the external circumstances insist on being chaotic. Therefore, one should not underestimate what this passage from Philippians represents. When one clings to this truth, they realize that the heart becomes less fickle and the mind less enslaved to the day-to-day circumstances. Those who take refuge in this peace experience something beyond reason. Peace, amidst difficulties, a sign of divine guidance. Some may find it strange to remain at peace while everything seems to be going wrong. Some question whether it is a lack of realism or even an escape from reality. But the Word shows that if the heart rests even during crises, it is a strong indication that God is guiding the journey. He does not abandon His own in the fire. Even when the solution is not immediate, the inner peace indicates that the outcome is already in his hands. This feeling of tranquility contrasts with the anxiety that eats away from within. It is a reminder that we are not obligated to bear the weight of afflictions alone. Amidst all of this, a desire to question may arise. How can I have peace if I still see no answers? However, God does not usually wait for situations to resolve in order to bring serenity. Many times, he speaks first to the heart, preparing the person for everything that comes next. He adjusts perception, strengthens emotions, and provides new perspectives. So, when the external change finally occurs, the person already feels secure and confident. And if, by chance, the circumstances take time to resolve, there is still inner strength, for peace does not depend on the physical environment, but on an intimate conviction that God does not forget us. God speaks to the heart before acting in the situation. It is common to wait for God to fix the outside before finding calm within. However, he acts in the opposite way. In many cases, God first sows peace within before intervening in circumstances. This may seem strange to those in need of concrete solutions, but he knows that we need to be prepared. A heart in despair cannot discern divine plans clearly. God calms internal storms so that we can see paths that once seemed non-existent. If he resolved everything from the outside in, our growth would be minimal. But when he does the opposite, we learn to trust and notice signs that had previously gone unnoticed. Perhaps you are at a point where anguish has taken over. The doors seem closed, and you yearn for some urgent change. In such times, it is worth silencing the mind for a moment and inviting God to bring that peace that only he can provide. It's not about negating emotions or ignoring problems. It is an act of surrender, recognizing that control is not in our hands, and that trying to solve everything on our own only generates more chaos. This surrender makes space for the divine voice to manifest. It's as if God whispers, "Be at peace, for I am taking care of every detail." Ways to cultivate this inner peace. Achieving inner peace doesn't happen by chance. It requires nurturing a constant communion with God, setting aside time to pray and share without holding back what weighs on your heart. Dedicating moments to reading the Word, allowing it to revitalize the soul and illuminate dark areas of our minds. Often, restlessness arises from a lack of clear direction. The Bible offers principles that can guide decisions, bringing more balance and security. When we open ourselves to this experience, peace is no longer confined to moments of prayer. It begins to reflect in our daily activities, in how we handle challenges, and in the way we view the future. Another important factor is to carefully choose what we feed ourselves internally. If we surround ourselves with negativity and words that only produce fear, peace naturally slips away. However, when we seek counsel that lifts our faith and reminds us that God does not forsake us, restlessness has no space to settle in. It's an ongoing exercise, as we do not live in an ideal environment. Problems knock at the door and pain arises unexpectedly. Still, inner peace becomes a shield that prevents the complete destruction of hope. Encouraging you to leave comments of faith now, it's essential to take a step beyond mere reading. Have you felt a stirring within you as you read this? Do you recognize the need to receive that peace which comes from God and guards your heart? Invite this peace to reign over your thoughts and desires. And if you wish, share in the comments what you hope for from divine action. Write a declaration. I choose to trust in God's peace. I receive this tranquility that comes from above. I believe that God is calming my inner self. When you express this faith, you not only strengthen yourself, but also inspire others to open up to the divine presence. Make your statement known. It's a simple but powerful act. When someone reads your comment, they might feel encouraged to keep fighting. Perhaps your testimony will be the spark that another heart needs to be reborn in hope. Don't underestimate the impact of every word shared. There is a purpose in sharing faith, for goodness multiplies when it is spread. And by writing, you internally affirm that you are willing to live this truth. Inner peace is not a luxury for those who live without problems. It is, in fact, a divine gift available to those who choose to trust in God's care, even as circumstances try to shake their conviction. Philippians 4:7 is not just a beautiful phrase, but a promise that the heart and mind can be kept in a serenity that no one can explain logically. When we understand that the peace of God surpasses understanding, we no longer depend on perfect conditions. We begin to rest amidst the struggle, knowing that He governs all. If you find yourself under pressures that seem to crush your dreams, don't suppress the cry of your soul. Seek God with honesty. Ask Him to invade your emotions and put in order what is confused. Remember, He does work in the details. Often, He first touches the inner self, heals resentments, aligns priorities, and adjusts perspectives. And as this transformation occurs, the way we see problems changes. What was once perceived as big and frightening begins to lose its power, and inner peace takes the place of anxiety. At this point, it's up to you to decide whether you want to continue walking alone or allow God to take the lead. If you choose to surrender to His care, prepare to experience a serenity that many can only dream of. The circumstances may not change overnight, but the way you face them will be completely different. The peace of God surpasses the boundaries of human understanding and brings forth hope where everything seemed dead. So don't forget to share your choice and declaration of faith in the comments. Say firmly, "I embrace this inner peace," or "I receive the peace of God that protects me." Be specific. Open your heart. In doing so, not only do you strengthen your own spirit, but you also sow inspiration for all who come here. Every word of confidence shared can transform the mood of those who read it, and this chain of faith can bring about changes that exceed our imagination. Understand that inner peace is not passivity. It is a living trust in a God who watches over His people. This peace motivates us to move forward without fear, to face battles without giving up. It is a quiet strength that points to a future full of hope. Choose today to experience this reality and share with others the conviction that, even amid difficulties, divine guidance remains secure. God speaks to the heart above all, bringing calm in a world full of chaos. May you open yourself to this voice and allow it to transform your inner self. Confirmation through Scripture. When someone seeks guidance and wonders whether God truly responds, they often overlook the power found in the Scriptures. It's not just an ancient book filled with stories. It is where we find words that touch on hidden wounds, igniting hope amid scenarios of despair. Therefore, when speaking of divine confirmation, one cannot ignore that the Bible undeniably fulfills this role. In moments of pain or confusion, opening its pages may be the missing step to uncovering answers that seemed absent. It's not an exaggeration to say that on many occasions, the right verse appears just when the soul is pleading for direction. God speaks directly through the Bible. Some may argue that God does not manifest Himself today. However, when one reads the Word, the experience is different. It's common to feel as if each sentence was crafted for a specific situation. This is not an invention or a simple desire to fit what is read into one's own problems. In reality, the Bible reveals itself to be alive, capable of reaching deep areas of the human soul. It is there that God makes it clear that no topic is forgotten and no tear is ignored. He communicates straightforwardly through passages that either leave the heart restless or consoled, depending on what is needed at that moment. Answers. During reading. Anyone who has opened the Bible amid an inner storm knows what it is like to find, in just a few lines, something that dispels fears. Sometimes a specific passage illuminates points of pain that were consuming peace. This is not mere coincidence, but rather divine care that organizes every detail. There are moments when God's silence seems unbearable, yet just a few verses can make everything take on a different meaning. This reading can unmask deceptions, correct paths, and bring relief. Instead of attributing it to chance, it's worthwhile to consider that there is a hand guiding the eyes to what the soul needed to absorb. The right verse, at the exact moment. It's not uncommon for someone, torn apart by questions, to find in a single Bible verse the answer that no one else could provide. It could be an ancient promise, a word of encouragement, or a loving correction. The fact is, we are not dealing with coincidence, but with God's unmistakable way of communicating something that cannot be ignored. Such precision cannot be explained by the laws of chance. There is something greater orchestrating this meeting between what is sought and what is read. Recognizing this strengthens faith and shows that the Bible is not just a historical account, but a direct channel of dialogue. Open heart to the divine voice. To perceive this confirmation, one must open their heart. If someone reads the scriptures merely as an academic exercise, they may not grasp the essence that springs from each sentence. God does not usually compete with distracted hearts. He reveals himself to those who truly desire to hear him. Those who approach the Bible without haste or pride find in it a comfort for the soul. It is in this surrender that the word acts, and verses leap off the page as if they were directed personally. This intimate moment reveals God's concern. He speaks through his word, doing so with a precise touch that often surprises. When doubt fades away, it's easy to doubt when one is in the midst of crises, questions about the future, uncertain decisions, about failures that continue to haunt. This is where the effectiveness of biblical text comes in. Sometimes a single chapter reorients the mind, causing insecurity to lose its grip. The external situation may not change immediately, but something within transforms. Insecurity gives way to an unexpected confidence. It is not a rational process. It is the action of God speaking loudly, showing that he maintains control over everything, even when circumstances try to prove otherwise. It's not coincidence. Many like to call it coincidence that the text read that morning dealt precisely with the fear that has been stealing their sleep. However, over time, one realizes that it's not just chance. There is a sequence of events pointing to a divine plan that goes beyond understanding. God has been writing the story of humanity for centuries, and in every generation, his word remains relevant. The changes in time or culture do not matter. The message renews itself, adjusting to the struggles of each person willing to know it. If it were mere coincidence, there wouldn't be such punctuality or so many stories converging to the same conclusion. God speaks, and he speaks directly through Scripture. Experience that transforms relationships. A person touched by the Word changes the way they see life and even their relationships. They start to act with more patience, forgive past offenses, and recognize their mistakes with less reluctance. When biblical teachings become vivid, the essence transforms. These are not superficial or facade changes, but authentic ones, supported by the conviction that God is in control. Others notice the difference in behavior and become intrigued. Often, these changes occur because, in a moment of reading, a verse confronted pride, brought repentance, or simply warmed the heart amid existential coldness. Awakening engagement. Faith comments now, it is essential that you, as you absorb these truths, share what you feel. Use the comments section to talk about how the word has already impacted you. If there's a specific verse that touched your heart, make sure to note it. If you felt that God used a passage to answer long-held questions, describe it. This act of publicly recording your faith creates a powerful connection, not just for you, but for those who read it. Write something like, "I experienced an answer through this verse," or "Today I understood what God wanted to show me in the Bible." These statements inspire others to seek confirmation in the Scriptures and to realize that there is no reason to doubt a God who speaks. 10. Commitment to reading and deepening. It's not about opening the Bible randomly and expecting magical solutions. Divine confirmation happens when we commit to seeking, studying, and reflecting sincerely. It's a process of drawing closer to the author of the words. The more you read, the more your mind aligns with God's purposes. Everyday life takes on new contours. Fatigue doesn't vanish overnight, but there is an inner strength that is renewed, and gradually, with each passage absorbed, faith becomes unshakable. The storms of life don't suddenly disappear, but they lose the power to devastate one's inner being. Living promise in daily life. It's important to remember that the Bible isn't limited to religious ceremonies. It permeates everyday life, helping to deal with conflicts at home, face professional challenges, and make risky decisions. When you find a promise that reflects a specific situation, your heart receives the confidence to move forward. Over time, a collection of experiences accumulates, where each passage read resonates like an answer. When this history builds up, a person stops wavering so much. They know that if there has been intervention before, there will be again. And this is not blind hope, but a result of readings that have materialized into real solutions. The confirmation through the Scriptures is not an isolated phenomenon or a privilege reserved for a few. Anyone can approach the Bible and discover that there is the attentive and caring voice within it. Each verse can take on a distinct value, depending on the circumstances of the reader. And this meeting of human needs with the sacred text never occurs by mere chance. It is God drawing near to those who seek Him. So, if you have not yet experienced this direct contact, don't delay any longer. Open the Bible and allow the words to speak to your soul. Record what you discover. Share it with others. Leave your comments of faith. It's time to express how God has been guiding you and providing solutions. Write, for example, "I embrace the Scriptures as the voice of God in my life." Or, "Today I found the answer I so desperately needed." This could encourage someone who is facing uncertainty. These comments can create a chain of testimonies, showing everyone that God continues to speak through the Bible. When many gather to share their experiences, the certainty that the Creator communicates increases. Each story reinforces that the right verse at the right moment is not coincidence, but divine intervention. In this way, those who are still hesitant to approach the Scriptures will have living examples that there is much more than ancient letters within. There is life, there is a specific message, there is comfort, and above all, affirmation for future steps. So, do not hesitate to participate. Declare your experience in the comments, no matter how small it may seem. If you opened the Word today and felt something different, say so. If you read a passage that led you to a decision, share it. Use this space to strengthen faith and encourage those who are still doubtful. And most importantly, keep returning to the sacred text. With each reading, a new message may emerge that revitalizes, corrects, consoles, and directs. This is how God makes His presence known, showing that there is no silence when His Scriptures are within reach of our hearts. Circumstances around you. There are moments when everything around seems to change without warning. Doors that were once open close, and what was considered impossible happens right before our eyes, catching everyone by surprise. It's not easy to understand why certain opportunities arise and vanish so quickly. There's a sense that something greater is guiding every detail, even when human explanations fail. In various situations, the soul senses that God intervenes, whether to protect from an impending disaster or to lead toward a destination quite different from what was planned. And this intervention is not always comfortable. It can involve losses, upheavals, and painful transitions. However, looking back, one can notice a divine care that shapes every step. God changes situations according to His will. Those who have experienced an unexpected intervention know how disconcerting it is to realize that the course of an entire story has been altered. This might manifest in a job that didn't come through, a trip cancelled at the last minute, or a relationship that ended without apparent explanation. At the moment, frustration may take control and cause a lot of hurt, but along the way, clarity may arise that God in some way spared you from something that didn't fit into His plans. He sees beyond what immediate perception captures. If a door has closed, He has likely opened another that has yet to be discovered. It's common to raise the question, does God really get involved to the point of determining each step? There isn't a manual that intricately details every move, but there are accounts of lives that have been profoundly transformed by these interventions. When everything seems to go wrong, an opportunity appears that didn't exist before. It seems crazy, but divine intervention does not limit itself to predictable scenarios. In many moments, God moves pieces that we didn't even imagine were relevant. Protection and guidance. When something derails our plans, irritation often comes immediately. We are bombarded with thoughts of failure, wasted time, and doors that will never reopen. However, it's essential to take a broader perspective. Sometimes the blockage is God's protection. He knows not only the intentions of our hearts, but also the traps that lie ahead. It's possible that if we had continued down that path, we would have fallen into pitfalls that could destroy greater projects. Thus, a closed door is not a punishment, but a way to redirect us to a different point. In addition to protection, there is also direction. God not only saves us from the worst, but also nudges us towards something better. And that better doesn't always seem obvious at the moment. Perhaps the dream nurtured for years is set aside and disappointment takes over. But those who persevere with an open heart and a willingness to look beyond appearances discover a new door that perfectly aligns with the divine purpose. In the end, the realization is that there was no real loss, but rather an adaptation to a deeper plan. Biblical stories. Joseph in Egypt. The Bible offers accounts of people who experienced this type of turnaround. Joseph is a striking example. Sold by his own brothers and thrown down a path full of injustices, he ended up imprisoned in a foreign land. Those who observe only the surface might conclude that his life was ruined, but as the story unfolds, we see God's hand guiding each phase. Even in prison, Joseph finds favor and takes on responsibilities. When least expected, he interprets dreams that reach the ears of Pharaoh, leading to a prominent position. From that position, he not only saved a nation from famine, but also reconnected with the family that had betrayed him. Looking at this journey, the stages seem confusing and unfair. Jose must have questioned many times why he faced so much trial. But in the end, it becomes clear that there was a greater plan. If he hadn't gone through each of these stages, he wouldn't be prepared for the mission that was to come afterward. God closed some doors, freedom, peaceful family life, but opened others that culminated in salvation for many. This story isn't a fairy tale. It's an account that teaches how the circumstances around us can seem bleak while God is preparing something grand. Divine actions that frustrate expectations. Saying that God can frustrate expectations sounds harsh. No one likes to have their dreams curtailed, especially when they are investing time and energy. But the reality is that not everything we desire aligns with divine will. Some of our plans clash with a greater scheme. It may be that the timing is not right, or that ultimately it would bring more harm than good. In these cases, God may allow initial failures to spare us from a much worse failure down the line. He may permit relationships to crumble to avoid destructive ties in the future. This understanding comes gradually when we allow ourselves to grasp the divine dynamics. Finding signs amidst the confusion. When life turns upside down, it's tempting to think that God doesn't care. However, amidst the chaos, He often sends signs. These can come in the form of people appearing with wise advice, unusual opportunities knocking at the door, or even doors closing to redirect our steps. The key is to develop sensitivity to pick up on these movements. In a world full of noise and chaos, it's easy to overlook God's gentle nudges. Yet by neglecting them, we risk heading down paths that lead nowhere. If you feel something is shifting around you and you don't quite understand why certain things are stuck, it might be time to evaluate. Is there a door that keeps refusing to open? Perhaps it's a sign that this isn't the right path. Is there an opportunity that has arisen unexpectedly? It could indicate that something special is waiting for you. This isn't a matter of superstition, but rather recognizing that some circumstances are completely beyond human control. When these signs repeat, perhaps God is trying to get your attention. How to deal with change. It's not easy to face changes that are beyond our desires. Sometimes, feelings of helplessness grow stronger. However, instead of struggling against what can't be changed, it's important to adopt a stance of trust. Acknowledge that if God has closed a particular door, He knows exactly what He is doing. It may take time for the heart to accept this, as emotions often scream otherwise. But gradually, if a person opens up to this understanding, the pain of frustration lessens and gives way to renewed hope. On the other hand, when unexpected opportunities arise, it takes courage to move forward. Some people hesitate when faced with possibilities that differ from what they had planned. The fear of the unknown paralyzes them, and they might miss the chance to experience something amazing. So, the call is to trust and take steps of faith, even when human logic can't fully explain it. Many times, God reaches out through a situation that seems off-script. Accepting or rejecting is a personal decision, but those who accept often witness surprising turns of events. Invitation to engage, comments of faith. As you read all of this, you may have recalled significant episodes from your own life. Perhaps you have seen a door close without understanding anything, only to later discover that there was a purpose behind that loss. Or maybe you witnessed the hand of God opening a better opportunity. Share your experience in the comments. Leave something that reaffirms your faith. For example, you could say, "I believe God directs my path. I've seen doors open exactly when I needed them." Or, "I trust even when everything seems against me." Every comment carries a special power because it encourages those who are going through similar disappointments. It could be that someone, upon reading your words, finds the strength to rise again and trust in divine care. So, don't remain silent. Use this space to affirm your confidence and create bonds of hope with those who are also facing turbulent times. A simple testimony might be the boost of faith that someone else desperately needs. The example of Joseph and his future. Revisiting the story of Joseph reveals the importance of keeping your heart aligned with God, even when events seem unjust. At no point do the scriptures indicate that he became irreversibly angry. The pain must have been intense, but he remained upright, attentive to the circumstances around him. And because he positioned himself this way, he was able to embrace opportunities at the right time. The same principle applies to anyone who believes in divine intervention. Circumstances may sink expectations temporarily, but if trust remains, the outcome can be beyond what was imagined. There's no way to know all the details of the future. However, it is possible to nurture the certainty that God sees far beyond the present. He doesn't act blindly. Every barrier, every closed door, every twist and turn may fit into a larger picture that is only understood later on. It may take time for it to make sense. Still, those who refuse to give up find solace in the fact that God does not toy with anyone's life. He guides in a much wiser way than we can conceive. When we talk about the circumstances around us, a range of events appears that is beyond human control. The doors that open and close may generate strong emotions, but it's crucial to remember that God does not act randomly. He observes every detail, protects when necessary, and leads to something better when he sees that the old door is no longer suitable. Yes, there is pain in the process. There are questions, insecurities, moments of anger or deep sadness. But later on, the light shines through, revealing that nothing was in vain. Just as Joseph understood, everything contributes to a greater purpose, even though the early chapters are difficult to read. In this context, it is worth reaffirming. Share your experiences and declarations of faith in the comments. Many people need to know that even in the midst of adversity, there can be hope. Write something like, "I have seen God closing doors to spare me from greater harm," or "I believe He will lead me to an even better place." Each phrase shared forms a mosaic of encouragement. No one is alone in their battles, as there are brothers and sisters going through similar dilemmas. In this unity, faith is strengthened. Finally, know that the changes around you don't have to be a cause for despair. They can be signs that God is working quietly. If you can, allow Him to guide your steps. It won't always be easy, but the peace that comes from letting go surpasses the fear of uncertainties. And when you least expect it, the reason behind each closed door will come to light. The divine plan reveals itself in details that once seemed unrelated. Thus those who once felt lost and directionless discover that there is care and purpose in every change. If something didn't work out, it's likely because He is reserving another scenario that will surpass everything you had imagined. Trust, persevere, and whenever you can, share the faith that sustains you. God using people to speak to you. There are phases when the mind feels confused and the heart is tired of seeking answers. Prayers seem to bring no clarity, and the feeling is that everything is silent. However, God can reach you through unexpected means, using ordinary people to convey a message that touches the depths of your soul. It might be a friend who brings a precise word at the most necessary moment, or even someone who crosses your path for just a few minutes, but shares a phrase so poignant that it becomes impossible to ignore. This way of speaking isn't a rare phenomenon. On the contrary, it is part of the care of a God who knows every detail and desires to guide each step. The power of a well-placed word. Don't underestimate the effect of a single phrase that reaches deep within. There are testimonies from people who have come close to despair, contemplating giving up everything, only to be surprised by advice that transformed their worldview. It might have been a hallway conversation, an unexpected phone call, or even a message sent by mistake. And upon hearing or reading those words, something inside them was renewed. It's no accident. When God sends answers through someone, the impact is often profound. It's as if He chooses the exact moment to act, breaking down barriers that seemed insurmountable. Pastors, leaders, and counseling. In many circumstances, the path goes through spiritual leaders. Pastors and those who dedicate their lives to ministerial service can provide a warning or encouragement that reveals divine care. This doesn't mean they are superior or perfect. They are simply available to be instruments. A sermon that highlights exactly the issue weighing on your heart. An answer given during a counseling session that confronts your most intimate doubt. It's common to leave a meeting feeling as though the message was aimed directly at you. In that moment, something burns within, as if God is reassuring you that He sees you and cares about every detail. Friends who serve as bridges. There are times when an unassuming conversation with a friend turns into a powerful encounter. You share your concerns, seeking nothing more than a listening ear, but receive words that touch sensitive areas. A biblical verse might be shared, a reminder of something you mentioned in the past, or a reflection that pushes you toward an unavoidable decision. Behind this simple exchange might be the voice of God. There's no coincidence when someone says exactly what you needed to hear, even without realizing it. Strangers and unexpected encounters. A regular day can be interrupted by people you've never seen before and may never see again. Still, they can serve as messengers that bring direction or comfort. It may be someone on the street who approaches to ask something and, in the process, mentions something that resonates deeply with your life. It could also be a message received on social media from someone not on your contact list, but who carries a message that is incredibly relevant. These are forms of action that are beyond control. God is not limited to family or friendship circles. He can use anyone to awaken dormant hope or confirm a decision you've been putting off. The impact of an unexpected response. Some people report situations where they were debating with themselves about important decisions. Suddenly, they hear someone mention the exact issue that was troubling them, even addressing specific details. It's as if everything was set in motion to make you pay attention. At that moment, the mind tries to find logical explanations. After all, it's strange for someone to talk about such a rare or personal topic right next to you. However, there is immense comfort in receiving these confirmations, as they suggest that God does not act randomly. He moves in visible pieces so that the right message reaches those who need it. Real testimonies of responses, like this. There are countless accounts of people finding help in moments of despair, individuals who, on a day marked by pain, heard a co-worker say, "Don't give up now, something great is waiting for you." Others, during an existential crisis, heard someone on public transport quote a Bible verse that brought immediate relief. Some have experienced a turnaround after receiving an unexpected call from a distant relative who, unaware of what was happening, mentioned words that seemed tailor-made. These stories illustrate how God is not confined to what we call chance. How to recognize if it's God speaking. The question remains, how can you tell if that phrase was truly a divine message or just a coincidence? There are signs that make it clear when the message is not just any vague discourse. Generally, it touches on something that no one could know so well unless you had shared it. Sometimes, an inner peace or a feeling of awakening emerges. It's as if the mind opens up and everything suddenly falls into place. There may also be confirmation from other sources, such as a Bible verse that highlights the same theme or a friend mentioning something similar. When multiple pieces point in the same direction, it becomes hard to ignore. Resistance and skepticism. Some may receive words of encouragement but remain incredulous. The fear of disappointment causes a person to ignore the signs. The mind tries to rationalize everything, explaining that these occurrences are just luck or normal coincidences of life. However, even the skeptic can recognize when something touches deeper than the rational. If there is an openness to admit that God can indeed use people as spokespeople, the resistance diminishes. It's important to remember that God respects free will. Those who reject the messages still have a chance to draw closer, but miss precious moments of receiving clear and loving guidance. Why does God use people? Someone might ask, if He is all-powerful, why doesn't He speak directly to the heart without intermediaries? The answer lies in how God builds relationships. He values fellowship and interaction, among those who believe. By using someone, he also strengthens bonds, reveals mutual care, and awakens empathy and compassion. Additionally, speaking through another human gives a more tangible dimension as we hear the voice, feel the physical presence, and can ask questions. Instead of isolating ourselves in an individualistic spirituality, God promotes real contact, showing that no one is alone on this journey. Invitation for faith. Comments. If you've ever experienced a powerful response through someone, be sure to comment. Write something like, "I received a word that stopped me from giving up," or "I realized that God used a friend to comfort me." Leave this note. It's an act that strengthens your own heart and encourages others who are going through similar conflicts. There are those who are currently wishing for a clear sign. Reading testimonies of faith can renew hope and confirm that God remains alive and active in the lives of those who believe. So open your heart in the comments. Share how this intervention happened for you, or if you're waiting for a response, declare how much you long to hear him. Practicing sensitivity. Being attentive to how God speaks in this way requires sensitivity. It's important to slow down a bit, pay attention to everyday conversations, and listen without hurry. Often agitation and disbelief blind us. When you adopt a receptive attitude, it becomes clearer to discern when God is whispering something through someone. If there's a repeated insistence from different people on the same topic, consider seriously evaluating that matter. It may be God's way of saying, "Don't run away, I'm trying to show you a path." Opening up to this kind of awareness doesn't make life free from challenges, but it ensures faithful companionship in every decision. When God decides to use people to speak, there's no situation too complicated or distance too great. He moves through voices, gestures, hugs, and seemingly simple dialogues. It's in this movement that many souls find relief, encouragement, and direction. If at this moment you are yearning for a word that changes everything, stay alert, look around, listen carefully, read with sensitivity. And if a phrase resonates deeply, don't dismiss it as coincidence. Acknowledge that God can manifest in unexpected ways, using imperfect people to reveal the perfection of his love. Now leave your statement of faith in the comments, share your testimony, or express your desire to receive this kind of response. Write something that shows everyone you remain open to divine surprises. It can be something simple like, "I'm attentive to God's voice, even when it comes through the people around me." By doing this, you also encourage those who feel discouraged to wait for the moment when God will act through someone. There is a purpose in the fact that we are connected to one another. It reveals itself in a special way when we decide to value these opportunities. A renewed sense of purpose. Something powerful happens when, amidst tensions and uncertainties, a clear answer emerges. The heart, which once beat anxiously, relaxes. The mind, filled with chaotic thoughts, finds space for renewed joy. Suddenly, the direction to take becomes clear, and even practical steps seem to take shape. This is not fantasy or exaggeration. It is the effect of a God who responds and brings forth a sense of purpose that transforms the way we view life. This process is not usually linear, but it transforms every detail of our daily lives. The search for direction. In many moments, life presents itself as a journey full of forks in the road. Some decisions seem trivial, while others appear to define our entire future. It's common to feel fear of making a mistake, of choosing the wrong path. And when that fear settles in, daily life becomes burdensome. A sense of anguish arises from not knowing where to go or what to do immediately. In these times, it's not unusual to ask God for some kind of light to illuminate the next step. It can be through a silent prayer, a sincere request during a sleepless night, or a desperate cry in times of crisis. Many people report going days, weeks, or even months without seeing a viable path. Nevertheless, they persevere in the hope of receiving some guidance. It's not about wanting to escape responsibilities, but rather recognizing a deep yearning to live with true meaning. Amid this longing, God's response may arrive in a calm, serene, and almost subtle way. Yet, it is unmistakable. The role of the Holy Spirit. When it is said that God doesn't leave us confused, but guides us through the Holy Spirit, some may feel puzzled. How does this guidance work? It's not a booming voice that dictates every action. Usually, it's a conviction that arises from within, something that wasn't so evident before. That moment when, reflecting on a choice, you feel inner peace or a certainty that quiets your fears. It's a way for God to lead the heart, even when the circumstances still seem challenging. At times, the Holy Spirit instills a specific unease in us, prompting a re-evaluation of our priorities. In other instances, He brings calm regarding something we were almost abandoning out of fear. It could be the courage to start a project, the decision to move to a new city, or the urge to resume conversations that were left unresolved. This type of direction isn't a result of momentary emotion, as it tends to solidify as we continue seeking confirmation. One of the most striking signs that God is responding is the feeling of being on the right track. Ludi, it's hard to put into words, but it's as if all your fears are confronted by a certainty you just can't deny. It's not a moment where everything becomes perfect and obstacle-free. On the contrary, often the problems continue, but the heart gains the steadiness to move forward. This feeling of alignment with something greater brings a unique enthusiasm. People describe this state as a relief. Even though obstacles are present, determination grows. The mind stops fantasizing about endless possibilities and takes on a more objective stance. It seems that the distractions that used to consume time and energy are set aside, leaving space for what truly matters. This clarity is not just mental, it is accompanied by a deep sense that God is validating each step. Internal and everyday transformations. When purpose is renewed, not only do decisions change, but behavior does too. Some report that they stopped complaining as much after feeling that God pointed them in a specific direction. Others notice an unusual patience for tackling tasks that once seemed impossible. There are even those who are surprised to see how this new sense of direction affects relationships, bringing more empathy, humility, and care for those around them. This change does not depend on grand public displays. It is something that begins from within and gradually shows in daily actions. If there was impatience in enduring adversities before, now there is a greater understanding that every process is part of the learning journey. If there was a rush to achieve immediate results in the past, now comes the realization that each stage must be lived with purpose and attention. This is how God shapes character and prepares one for even greater challenges that may arise later. When doubts remain, it is natural for some doubts to linger even when feeling a certain clarity. Humans usually like guarantees, deadlines, and tangible confirmations. However, God's guidance does not always come with a step-by-step plan. Often, He reveals the essentials and allows each person to walk, trusting in the presence that accompanies them. So if you still find some hesitation, don't conclude that everything is wrong. It may just be part of the process of growing in faith. In this context, perseverance becomes crucial. If there's a hint of conviction inside, keep moving forward. Many more specific answers may arise along the journey. God is not interested in leaving anyone blind and abandoned. What He desires, most of the time, is to deepen the relationship and teach us to depend on Him more with each step. It is in that dependence that insecurity diminishes and confidence flourishes. Sharing your faith, uplifting comments. Now, it's important for you to engage. Don't keep that impulse to yourself. Share in the comments how you've experienced this renewed sense of purpose or how you're seeking that clarity. Perhaps you want to write, I feel God guiding me into a new phase, or I found peace by surrendering my decisions to Him. When you record these declarations of faith, something strengthens within your own heart, and others are impacted as they read. If you are still seeking direction, feel free to leave a sincere message. I long for a clear answer, or I need that peace that confirms the right path. This act of expressing what's in your soul helps the community come together in prayer, creating an environment of encouragement, and thus each person feels less isolated in the search for renewed purpose. Remembering divine care, amid all this searching, it's easy to forget that God is neither apathetic nor distant. He cares about every detail, including the future that unfolds for each individual. That's why, when He responds, He does not settle for merely providing superficial instructions. He goes deep, adjusts the inner self, removes unnecessary burdens, and implants dreams that connect to something much greater. When someone experiences this, they understand they are not alone in this journey. Some people wonder if God cares about what are considered small matters. The truth is that He does not distinguish between what is big or small in our lives. If it troubles the heart, if it influences the course of our thoughts, then He is paying attention. It may take time for everything to make sense, but divine care manifests in every sign, in every word that brings peace, in every feeling that the next step is clear. The joy of finding one's place. When the answer finally becomes evident, the effect inside is a mix of relief and excitement. You feel that you fit into something larger, that the pieces are moving in harmony. This doesn't mean that obstacles disappear, but the way you react to them changes. A sense of belonging emerges, understanding that each day has a meaning that goes beyond routine activities. This understanding is reflected in how you see others, how you invest time in projects, and how you face difficulties as surmountable stages. People who go through this renewal feel an urge to spread positivity in their surroundings. There is more willingness to collaborate, more initiative to help those in need. The reason for this is simple. When the heart finds security, it no longer drowns in insecurities and can open up to care for others. That's when purpose, in addition to guiding personal life, expands and produces fruits that reach those nearby. A renewed sense of purpose brings clarity, but also discipline. God typically does not allow answers to come so we can remain idle. He wants every choice to reflect trust in the direction we've received. It may be that by coming this far, you feel the need to revisit attitudes you've held for a long time. Perhaps you notice that you need to revive a long-forgotten dream. Or maybe your challenge is to break free from something that blocks your ability to move forward. In each situation, what God does is open our eyes to see why all of this matters and how it fits into the story He is writing. If you've experienced something similar, share in the comments how this clarity has manifested for you. Leave a phrase that reflects your experience or your commitment to this new phase. Write, "I feel the Holy Spirit guiding me," or "I've found my direction and want to keep going strong." This simple act of sharing can motivate someone still caught in the shadows of uncertainty. And if you're not sure yet, don't hesitate to declare, "I'm asking God for this sense of purpose." Each of these messages builds a space of support, strengthening both the reader and the writer. Don't ignore the opportunity to live with true meaning. God is not a distant spectator. He responds, guides, renovates, and directs. The heart does not need to remain anxious or confused. There is an active care that illuminates every step. The assurance of being on the right path does not arise from chance. It springs from communion with the One who knows what the best route is. Trust, open yourself, and move forward with the conviction that the Holy Spirit is aligning everything so your journey becomes filled with purpose and real significance. What to do? if you still haven't seen an answer. At times, the heart feels overwhelmed by uncertainties. You kneel down, exposing the deepest parts of your soul, yet day after day, you see no signs of change. This feeling can turn prayers into a constant challenge, bringing doubts to the surface that shake your confidence. It is in this scenario that many wonder whether they should keep pressing on or if it's all just a futile effort. However, there is a firm call that echoes in the Word. It is necessary to persist, even when silence seems to be the only answer. Persistence in prayer. Luke 18:1 shines a light on the need not to give up. We should always pray and never lose heart. This statement isn't limited to days of calm. It applies when the wind blows against you and every attempt seems futile. It is precisely during these times that perseverance reveals who truly trusts that God is attentive. If it were easy to receive everything immediately, there would be no depth to faith or lessons learned in waiting. Persistence ultimately becomes a tool that shapes character and trains the eye to recognize divine care in the details. Some may interpret this continuity in prayer as stubbornness or desperation, but it is an exercise in humility. By insisting, you acknowledge your limitations and reaffirm that only God can provide the true answer. This does not mean living in submission to endless anguish. Rather, it means keeping alive the flame of healthy expectation, even when circumstances have not yet changed. Those who pray without losing heart choose to believe that there is more than what the eyes can see in the present. Trusting in God. Even when you don't understand, trust in God is put to the test when nothing seems clear. It's in this phase that the mind analyzes every detail, trying to find a plausible explanation for the apparent silence. Human will seeks to understand, control, and predict. However, trusting in God requires letting go of the need to have all the answers at hand. It's a painful step for those who crave immediate security, but an essential step for those who wish to deepen their faith. Many get lost, thinking that divine answers are always a yes on their desired timeline. But the spiritual journey doesn't follow that script. Sometimes there's a long period of waiting with no clear signs. At other times, there's a redirection that completely contradicts what one had envisioned. And there are occasions when it's only much later that one understands why the delay occurred. When one embraces trust, even without answers, the soul gains stability to move forward. When God seems silent, it may be that your greatest struggle right now is with the feeling that God has gone silent. However, it's important to remember that silence does not indicate a lack of action. There are processes unfolding quietly. On earth, many seeds germinate below the surface, out of sight. In the same way, God works in ways that often elude human reasoning. At the moment you think nothing is happening, there's an invisible preparation that will become clear later on. This silence can be a test that refines faith. Emotions stir, and fear tries to take the place of hope. But those who persevere know that, even without hearing immediate echoes, they are not alone. Continuing the search for God amid this stillness develops an inner strength that is not forged in times of ease. And when the answer finally emerges, it arrives like a cool breeze for someone who has already felt the heat of the desert. God always acts for our good. One of the keys to enduring the wait is understanding that God does not leave us helpless. If the time seems long, if the response is delayed, it is not due to abandonment, but rather a plan that surpasses our limited vision. It could be a process of maturity, a protection from something we do not understand, or even a way to redirect us to a path that will bring genuine joy. It's easy to speak in theory, but in practice, when everything feels stagnant, impatience screams. Still, each phase of waiting can reveal small confirmations that He is present. It might be a word that arrives at the right moment, a door that closes to prevent a disaster, or a feeling of peace that calms anxiety. These small signs do not replace the final answer, but they indicate that God has not exited the scene. Although it is difficult to see the good amidst the chaos, the testimonies of so many who have gone through similar experiences confirm that He knows how to weave together each event for our benefit. The struggle against discouragement. No one is immune to the temptation to give up when things don't seem to resolve. Discouragement whispers that nothing will change, that prayer is futile, and that your request doesn't make a difference. However, it is precisely at this point that we must combat those defeatist thoughts. Persistence does not come solely from human effort. It also stems from a conviction that the Word affirms God hears and responds, even if it's not according to our desired timeline. Seeking support from friends and people of faith also helps to combat discouragement. Contact with those who have experienced similar situations brings hope. Additionally, sharing how you feel without disguises lightens the load. Sometimes someone can offer encouragement that makes a difference in the darkest hour. Do not face the journey alone. The body of Christ is here to support one another, reminding us that the wait can be tough, but victory comes to those who don't give up. Learning to recognize God's voice and signs. While the final answer doesn't come, it's crucial to train the heart to recognize the subtle signs. Many people expect a grand manifestation, but God often works in discreet details. It may be Bible verses that stand out during reading, people offering unexpected advice, or a deep sense of peace when considering a particular path. Those who are attentive pick up on these clues and allow themselves to be guided by them. Sometimes, the habit of noticing what God shows us is lacking. Some pray for direction, but proceed inattentively. Learning to quiet the soul for a few moments can be the first step. In a world full of noise, setting aside time to contemplate the Word and reflect on circumstances becomes essential. If the heart seeks distractions, it will be difficult to notice the whispers that God sends. Attitude of gratitude in waiting. Another way to keep hope alive is by cultivating gratitude, even when circumstances seem adverse. When you choose to be thankful for what you have already received and for what is in process, your mind shifts its focus. Instead of diving into what is lacking, you begin to see the blessings that have already been poured out. This change in perspective can be crucial for resisting emotional weariness. It's not about pretending there is no pain or ignoring the anguish that sometimes invades your thoughts. It's about balancing your perceptions, remembering that God has already done significant things in the past and will continue to act now. It's about internally reinforcing that He does not fail, even when appearances shout the opposite. Gratitude strengthens the conviction that the outcome will be better than you can imagine, because the one in control is a loving Father. Encouragement to persist. If you find yourself in a place of intense searching, don't hold back your cries for help. Don't let the apparent delay snuff out the flame of faith that still burns within you. Pray once more, bring your request before Him again, but also use this time to deepen your relationship with God, not just to solve immediate problems. And if the silence continues, remember that He has already heard you. What happens behind the scenes, you may not see fully, but there is a greater purpose at work. When you're weary, bring to mind Luke 18:1. Remember that this is a clear command. Pray always, without losing heart. It's not merely advice, it's a determination, and it comes laden with promises. Those who persist, who knock on the door repeatedly, end up witnessing things that most consider impossible. God honors those who place themselves in a position of trust, even when the winds are against them. Call to action. Share your experience. Have you ever received an answer from God in your life? Share in the comments to strengthen the faith of others. Tell about that moment when everything seemed pointless, but something happened that transformed your perspective. Perhaps you are currently in a waiting period. If that's the case, leave your comment asking for prayer, declaring your perseverance, or testifying about the small signs you've already noticed. This way, others will feel encouraged to keep praying and trusting. Remember, God always listens. Even when the evidence suggests otherwise, He remains attentive. The answer doesn't always come in the form we desire or at the time we expect. But He does not fail. It is up to each of us to learn to discern His voice, even when it comes softly or in an unusual way. And if it still feels like a dark night, hold firmly to the certainty that dawn is coming. Keep praying, trusting, and observing the divine action in the smallest situations. Ultimately, persisting in prayer and trusting in God, even in silence, is not trivial advice. It's a way of life that frees the heart from unnecessary anxieties and develops a robust faith. May this text ignite hope in those who were on the verge of giving up. And may each testimony in the comments serve as a living reminder that He responds, guides, and never leaves anyone alone. So don't hold back what you've already experienced. Share and inspire others. If you haven't seen an answer yet, be prepared for the moment when everything will make sense, because God does not forsake those who choose to believe in His faithfulness until the end.